Wind pressed through the cracks of the shack, carrying dust and the sound of boots. Mercy Dalton froze mid-motion, the ladle trembling in her hand. Through the thin wall came the creak of saddle leather, the metallic jingle of spurs, and men's voices. Low, certain, official. Her son, little Tom, looked up from the table, spoon halfway to his mouth. "Ma!" She set the ladle down softly, eyes fixed on the door. The knocking came, hard, sharp, and final. "Mercy Dalton," called Sheriff Bragg's voice, cold as dry iron. "You open up now." Mercy's hand brushed her boy's hair. "Go stand by the stove, baby. Don't say nothing." The boy obeyed, bare feet silent on the splintered boards. Mercy opened the door. The sunlight hit like a slap, white-hot, unforgiving. 3 men stood there, Sheriff Bragg, 2 deputies, dust up to their knees. Their horses waited behind them, shifting uneasily in the heat. Bragg's badge caught the sun. "Afternoon, Widow Dalton. Got business today." Her throat felt tight. "You came yesterday," she said. "And I told you yesterday the tax is due. This land's claimed by Mr. Clayton Voss now. Fair and legal." He unrolled a paper with a snap. "Sign here to surrender property, or be evicted by sundown." Mercy didn't move. The wind tugged her hair across her face. Behind her, Tom peeked from the doorway, wide-eyed, small, clutching a wooden toy horse. Bragg's eyes drifted toward the boy. "Ain't right for a child to be living out here. No roof fit for a coyote." Mercy stepped into the doorway, blocking his view. "This is our home." Bragg smirked. "Not anymore." He nodded to his men. One step forward, heavy boots thudding against the porch. "Please," Mercy whispered, her voice cracking in the heat. "Don't take my child away." The words hung in the air, dry, desperate, almost swallowed by the wind. The sheriff's face didn't change. He tore the notice in half and tossed it in the dust. "You got till sundown. After that, you're trespassing on Voss land." The men turned, their spurs slicing the silence, dust curling in their wake. Mercy watched until the riders became shapes, then shadows, then nothing at all. Only the creak of the windmill answered back. Hours later, the sun burned low, flattening everything into gold and shadow. Mercy hauled a bucket from the well, her arms trembling from the weight. The water sloshed over her boots. From the ridge beyond the corral came a faint glint, a figure on horseback, unmoving against the light. She squinted, shielding her eyes. The man didn't move, just watched. A shiver ran through her. Folks said the rancher who lived past the canyon was strange. Elias Ward, they called him. The man who never spoke. She turned away, heart beating fast. When she looked back, he was gone. Night came heavy. Coyotes howled in the far mesas. Inside, the oil lamp flickered over cracked walls and a worn Bible lying open on the table. Tom slept on a cot near the hearth, the toy horse tucked under his chin. Mercy sat beside the window, sewing a tear in his shirt, but her hands wouldn't stay steady. Each gust of wind outside made her flinch. Boots? Hoofbeats? Or just the desert breathing? Then a sound. Not wind this time. A faint thunk against the door. She rose, lantern trembling in her grip. When she opened the door, the night spilled in, cold, dark, endless. At her feet lay a small burlap sack. She knelt, opened it, bread, jerky, a folded note. No signature, only 3 words scrawled in charcoal. "Keep the boy safe." She stepped onto the porch. The horizon shimmered silver under the half-moon. Out there, among the sage and shadow, a lone rider moved away, slow, deliberate, disappearing into the dark. Morning broke harsh and bright. Mercy stood beside her fence line, the posts leaning, rope frayed. But something was different. The fence had been mended. Fresh wood, new nails, even a rail replaced. She ran her fingers along the grain. Whoever did it worked quiet, careful. No tracks but a single boot print near the gate. When she turned, old Mrs. Calloway from the next ranch over was coming down the path, shawl tight against the wind. "They say the sheriff's coming back today," she warned. "Voss wants her land cleared for cattle." Mercy's jaw set. "He'll have to clear me first." The old woman sighed, eyes soft with pity. "You're a brave soul," Mercy Dalton. But brave don't feed a child. Mercy looked past her, toward the open desert where the rider had vanished. Her voice came quiet like prayer. No, but maybe it saves one. By noon, the heat shimmered over the dirt road leading to Dry Creek. Mercy stood in front of her house, sleeves rolled, sweat glistening. Tom sat under the shade, humming softly. A dust trail rose on the horizon. Riders again. She didn't move this time. Her eyes stayed fixed. The sheriff reined in his horse, stopping a few feet away. You had your grace period. Time's up. Mercy said nothing. He sighed. I'll make it easy on you. Pack what you can carry. The boy goes with the circuit orphanage till you get on your feet. Tom's humming stopped. He looked up, confusion turning to fear. Ma! Mercy stepped forward, planting herself between them. Her shadow stretched long across the dirt. You have to take me down first. The sheriff smiled, slow and cruel. That can be arranged. He dismounted, hand drifting near his revolver. Tom whimpered. Before the sheriff could speak again, a voice carried through the dry air, steady, quiet, and near. That's far enough, Bragg. The sheriff froze, turning his head. Down the road, a lone rider sat his horse, tall, broad-shouldered, hat low, dust swirling around him. No badge, no words after that, just presence. The men at Bragg's side shifted uneasily. Mercy stared, heart pounding. She knew that shape now, the silent rancher. The sheriff's mouth twitched. Well, I'll be damned. Ward, that you? Didn't think you'd crawl out of your hole for anyone. The rancher said nothing, just dismounted, every motion slow and sure. Bragg spat in the dirt. This ain't your fight. Ward's gaze moved from Mercy to Tom, then back to Bragg. His voice came low, like stone breaking water. It is now. The sheriff hesitated, eyes flicking toward the distant town. No backup, no witnesses. A wind rolled through, lifting dust and grit between them. Tom reached for his mother's hand. She held it tight, eyes glistening. Elias Ward turned away first, not retreating, just stepping aside, silent as a prayer. He mounted his horse again and rode off without another word. Bragg muttered something under his breath and followed his men back down the trail, dust trailing behind them like smoke. Mercy stood watching long after they were gone. The sun had dropped lower, bleeding red into the mesas. She whispered into the empty air, "Thank you," and though no one answered, the wind seemed to soften, carrying her words toward the horizon, where a lone rider moved through the dying light. Steel met wood in the dim light as Elias Ward drove the last nail into the new fence rail. The hammer's echo rolled across the canyon, lost to wind and distance. A crow called from a lone mesquite, its cry sharp against the silence. Elias paused, breath heavy, sweat cut lines through the dust on his face. The scar on his jaw caught the sun when he looked toward the valley, toward the small cabin below, where a thin trail of smoke rose straight into the pale sky. Mercy Dalton's home. He stood still a long time, hand on the fence post, the same way a man stands over a grave. Not to mourn, but to remember. Behind him, the sound of hooves broke the stillness. He turned slightly, slow, deliberate. A stranger rode up, a ranch hand from town, lean, leathered, nervous. "You, Elias Ward?" the rider asked, voice too loud in the quiet. Ward didn't answer. He just looked at him. The man cleared his throat. "Sheriff Bragg says you're meddling in other folks' business. That widow's got no claim. You fixin' to get yourself in trouble over her." Elias wiped his hands on his vest, picked up the hammer again, and went back to work. The rider shifted in the saddle. "Ain't smart to cross Voss. He's got half this county on his payroll." Still no answer. "Suit yourself," the man muttered, turning his horse. "Just don't say nobody warned you." He rode off, dust trailing behind him like a dying snake. Elias watched the cloud fade, then leaned the hammer against the fence and stared down toward Mercy's shack. Even from here, he could see her moving, hanging laundry, her son chasing a stray chicken across the yard, laughter echoing faintly on the wind. The sound made his chest tighten. He hadn't heard laughter like that in years. That night, the lantern on Mercy's porch flickered against the dark. Inside, she hummed softly while mending Tom's blanket. The desert beyond her window breathed in long, cold gusts. Out past the corral, a figure moved, slow, silent, steady. Elias again. He left a bundle by the gate, a coil of rope, fresh nails, and a small tin of coffee. He looked once toward the house, saw the glow of the lamp, the small shapes moving within, then turned away before the ache in his chest could grow any heavier. Next morning, the town of Dry Creek buzzed like flies around a carcass. The sheriff's men drank at the saloon, loud and careless. "Widow's still on her land," one said, slamming his glass. "Bragg's losing his touch." Another laughed. "Ain't her stopping him. It's that ghost of a rancher." Elias sat in the far corner, silent, hat brim low, untouched whiskey glass in front of him. His reflection shimmered in the dusty mirror behind the bar. Gray eyes, hard lines, a face made of stone. He listened. The men kept talking. "Ward a fool," one spat. "He used to be somebody. Now he just mends fences for ghosts. Used to fight in the border wars, didn't he?" "Yeah. Lost his wife and kid in a raid. After that, he went quiet. Never spoke again." Elias rose without a word, dropped a coin on the counter, and walked out into the heat. By afternoon, the sheriff came riding up the trail again. Mercy was out back, chopping kindling when she saw him. Bragg's smile was easy, too easy. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said, dismounting. "Heard you've been getting help from a certain neighbor." "That true?" Mercy set the axe down. "Don't know what you mean." Bragg's eyes swept the yard, the mended fence, the new tools, the pile of firewood. "Don't play dumb." Ward's sticking his nose where it don't belong. She met his gaze without flinching. "If kindness don't belong, maybe this town's the one that's lost its way." Bragg's jaw twitched. "You've got till sunrise. I won't warn you again." He turned to go, boots crunching in the dirt. Then he stopped, looked back. "That rancher thinks he's your savior, but Voss'll eat him alive. You'll both be ghosts by next week." Mercy's face didn't change, but her hands tightened around the axe handle until her knuckles went white. From the ridge beyond the pasture, Elias watched every word. That night, lightning flickered far off over the mesa. Heat lightning, no rain. The wind smelled of iron and dry grass. Elias sat on his porch, rifle across his knees, a tin cup cooling beside him. The memories came unbidden. A burning farmhouse, screams, his wife's hands slipping from his grasp through the smoke. A soldier's promise broken, and the silence that followed him home. He closed his eyes, hearing again the widow's voice carried on the wind. "Please, don't take my child away." Something inside him shifted, slow but sure, like an old door unsealing. He stood, pulled the saddle onto his horse, and rode down toward the valley. Mercy woke to the sound of wood being split. She grabbed the lantern and stepped onto the porch. The night air bit cold, sharp with sage. At the fence line, a figure worked by moonlight, Elias, splitting logs with steady, rhythmic strikes. "Mr. Ward," she called softly. He stopped but didn't turn. "I can't take your charity," she said. "You've done enough." Still no answer. Only the sound of the axe lifting again, the crack of wood breaking. She stepped closer. "Why do you help us?" The axe paused mid-swing. He looked at her, eyes shadowed beneath the brim. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he lowered the axe, set it down, and spoke, his voice rough from disuse. "Because once," he said, "nobody did." Then he picked up his coat, threw it over his shoulder, and walked into the dark, leaving the scent of pine and dust in his wake. Dawn broke gray and quiet. Mercy found the logs stacked neatly beside her door, a small loaf of bread sitting on top. Tom came running, laughing at the sight. She smiled faintly, touching the bread as though it were something holy. Far beyond the pasture, Elias rode toward town, his horse kicking up pale dust. He passed the burned-out remains of an old chapel, its cross leaning crooked against the sky. He slowed, looking at it for a long moment, then moved on. By the time he reached Dry Creek, Bragg's voice was echoing from the saloon porch. "Ward, you keep meddling in Voss's affairs. I'll have you in irons." Elias didn't answer. Bragg sneered. "Too good to talk, huh? Maybe that silence of yours ain't honor. Maybe it's guilt." The rancher's eyes met his. Cold. Empty. Bragg spat. "You best ride on. Ghost man, before you make me wake the dead." Elias stepped forward, slow, deliberate, until the sheriff's grin faltered. Then he said, quiet but clear, "Careful, Sheriff. The dead don't stay quiet forever." He walked past, spurs whispering in the dust, leaving silence thicker than before. That night, every lantern in Dry Creek burned late. Word spread fast. The silent rancher spoke. And in the small house at the valley's edge, Mercy looked out at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, whoever you are." Out on the ridge, Elias Ward watched the light in her window flicker. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace before a storm. The lanterns in Dry Creek flickered like frightened eyes. The wind, which had howled all evening, died without warning, cut clean off, as if God himself had held his breath. From the edge of town came the slow, metallic creak of a saloon sign, swaying on a chain. After that, nothing. In that silence, even the crickets dared not speak. The widow Marin stood at her doorway, shotgun tight in her hands, eyes locked on the horizon. She had sent her boy, Eli, to the loft with orders not to move, not to whisper, not to breathe unless he had to. Every sound in the dark felt too loud. Her heartbeat, the rasp of her thumb against the iron trigger, the soft groan of old wood beneath her boots. From the street came a shuffle. Slow, deliberate, a man's weight dragging in the dust. She cocked the gun, the click cracking through the night like thunder. A figure stepped into the faint circle of lantern light. Long coat, hat brim pulled low. One shoulder dipped slightly, as though carrying an invisible burden. The man stopped, just beyond the fence. "You shouldn't be out here," she said, voice trembling only once. The man didn't answer. He lifted his head. The same silent rancher from that morning. The one who had watched the deputies drag away her few possessions. The one who hadn't spoken a word even when she begged. Now, under the brittle light, his face looked carved out of stone. "I said," Marin whispered, "you shouldn't be here." He didn't move. His hand rested on the wooden gate. The creak of the hinge was a sound too soft, too final. Then he spoke, first word anyone in Dry Creek had ever heard from him. "They're coming." Her breath caught. "Who?" "Men from Hollow Ridge. Hired by Reese." Her fingers tightened around the shotgun. "I figured as much." The man stepped forward. "They'll be here by midnight." The wind tried to stir again. One small whisper, then gone. Marin looked past him toward the desert road. The sand shimmered faintly under a bruised moon, the tracks of horses faint but fresh. She could almost hear their echo, distant hooves rolling through the valley. "How many?" she asked. "5, maybe 6. Her jaw clenched. "I've got 6 shells. You'll need more than that." His tone wasn't cruel. It was simple, like a statement of fact, stone laid on stone. For a moment, they just stared at each other. The silence between them felt like the space between two lightning strikes, charged, waiting. Then she said, "Why tell me now? You had all day." The rancher looked down, thumb running along the leather of his glove. "Because I wasn't sure I'd care." Her lip quivered, not in fear, but in anger. "And now you do?" He nodded once. "Now I do." The sound came then, a low rumble, far off, rolling like distant thunder. Hooves on hard earth. Marin's eyes darted toward the barn. "My boy's inside." "I know," the rancher said. She looked at him again, searching for something in his face. "Who are you, mister?" He didn't answer, only reached to unbuckle the strap of his rifle. The motion was smooth, practiced, a gesture learned long before Dry Creek ever knew his name. Marin's breath came shallow. "You a lawman?" "No." "Outlaw." He looked at her then, eyes sharp under the brim. "Once." The rumble grew louder. Shadows flickered across the far ridge, horsemen cresting the rise. "Inside," he said. Marin hesitated only a second before stepping back through the door. He followed, slow and steady, boots whispering against the boards. The boy stirred in the loft. "Mama." "Quiet, Eli." The rancher moved to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to see. "They're spreading wide, trying to flank the barn." She swallowed. "What do they want?" "Everything." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air was thick, dry dust and fear and something else, something old. Then the rancher laid his rifle across the windowsill. The motion was graceful, almost reverent. "You ever shot a man before?" he asked. Her voice cracked. "No. Don't start tonight unless you have to." Outside, the horses stopped. Men dismounted. Murmured voices carried through the stillness. The sound of metal, guns being drawn, checked, cocked. The rancher drew a slow breath. His thumb rested against the hammer of his rifle. One of the men shouted, "Widow, you in there? You best open that door." Marin didn't move. Another voice, deeper, rougher, Reese himself. "Ain't no sense in dying over a patch of dirt and a shack. You come out now. I'll make sure your boy grows up with both hands." The rancher's jaw tightened. Marin whispered, "He means it." "I know. Then why aren't we running?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "Because running don't stop men like him." Outside, boots crunched on dry soil. Shadows closed in. The rancher lifted the rifle. The barrel caught the light of the lantern, thin, sharp, deadly. "Stay low," he said. The first shot shattered the silence. Glass burst. A bullet slammed into the wall above Marin's head. She ducked, heart hammering. The boy screamed upstairs. The rancher fired once, clean, fast. A man fell outside with a choked cry. The others fired back. Wood splintered. Smoke filled the room. The lantern toppled, flame licking across the floorboards before Marin stamped it out. "Two gone," the rancher muttered. "Four left. How can you tell?" "Because they're scared now." More shots. Another scream. Then, silence again. The widow leaned against the wall, breathing hard. The air reeked of gunpowder and heat. Outside, a horse bolted. The last of the men were running. The rancher stood motionless at the window, watching them fade into the desert. Marin lowered her shotgun, voice trembling. "They'll be back." He nodded. "At dawn." She stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" The rancher looked down at his hands, calloused, steady, marked by old scars. His voice was barely a whisper. "Because once," he said, "someone helped me." The wind rose then, slow, almost mournful, whistling through the broken glass and over the silent fields. And for that one breathless hour before dawn, the world of Dry Creek held perfectly still. The sun rose blood-red over Dry Creek. Smoke drifted from the barn roof, curling slow and thin into the pale sky. The scent of gunpowder clung to the air like an old ghost. Crows circled low, crying over the bodies half buried in dust. The rancher stood by the fence, hat shadowing his face, coat torn and dark with the night's work. The widow Marin walked toward him, her hands still trembling though she tried to hide it. In the distance, Eli sat on the porch steps, silent, clutching the old rifle that was too heavy for his arms. "They'll come again," Marin said. The rancher didn't look at her. "They already have." He nodded toward the horizon. 5 riders. The men of Hollow Ridge, returning under the blistering dawn, their silhouettes long and crooked against the light. Reese rode at the front, his black duster whipping in the wind. The others trailed like vultures behind him, rifles glinting in the sun. Marin swallowed. "We can't take another fight." The rancher's voice was low. "There's no fight left to take." He reached into his coat and pulled something out. A tarnished badge, edges bent, silver dulled by years of dirt and blood. He set in her hand. "You were a marshal?" she whispered. "Long ago." Her breath caught. The metal was cold, heavy with stories she didn't know. "Why'd you quit?" He looked at her then, eyes distant, full of something older than regret. "Because I learned the law don't always stand on the side of mercy." The sound of hooves grew closer. The rancher turned back to the horizon, the sun at his back now. The light turned his outline into a blaze, a phantom of dust and fire. Marin's voice trembled. "What are you going to do?" He didn't answer. He stepped out into the road. The town was still. No one moved behind the windows. Every shutter was drawn. The only sound was the groan of wood and the far-off rattle of wind through the sign of the Broken Spur Saloon. Reese's voice cut through the quiet. "You again." The rancher didn't speak. Reese grinned, teeth flashing white beneath his hat brim. "You think you can play hero for a widow with nothing left? You ain't the law anymore, old man." The rancher's hand hovered near his holster. "No," he said softly. "Not anymore." Reese leaned forward in his saddle. Then why don't you step aside? The rancher's voice came out steady, each word carved clean from stone. Because mercy ain't weakness. Reese laughed, a hard, dry sound. You think that word'll stop a bullet? The rancher's eyes narrowed. No, but maybe it'll stop you. Reese spat into the dust. Boys! 3 rifles lifted. Marin shouted from the porch. No. The first shot cracked. The rancher's draw was faster, smooth as breath. His revolver barked once, twice, 3 times. Horses reared. One man fell. Another screamed. The air exploded with the chaos of gunfire and dust. Marin ran forward, dragging Eli behind her, ducking behind the trough. Bullets tore through the posts. The rancher moved like a shadow between bursts. 1 step, 1 shot, 1 fall. He reloaded by touch, eyes never leaving Reese. Come on, Marshall! Reese shouted. Let's end it proper. The rancher didn't speak. Reese fired again. The bullet tore through the rancher's sleeve. Blood darkened the dust at his feet. Marin screamed, Stop it! Please! Her cry echoed across the barren street, echoing off the saloon walls like a prayer no one would claim. Then silence. Reese's gun clicked empty. The rancher's revolver stayed steady, leveled at Reese's heart. Go home, he said quietly. Reese laughed, chest heaving. You won't do it. The rancher said nothing. His thumb eased back the hammer. But before he could fire, a small voice broke the air. Don't, mister. Eli. The boy stood in the open, trembling, his mother's hands reaching helplessly after him. The rancher froze. Eli's voice cracked, high and desperate. Mama said mercy's what makes us different. The wind shifted. The world seemed to hold its breath again. The rancher's hand lowered. Reese blinked, disbelief and fury twisting across his face. He reached for another gun tucked under his coat. Too slow. The rancher's revolver thundered once more. Reese fell from his horse, hitting the dust with a heavy, final sound. The others turned and fled, horses pounding back into the desert. When the dust settled, the rancher stood alone in the road, breathing hard, gun still smoking. Marin rushed to him, eyes wide. You. He holstered the weapon. You should bury him proper. Not for him, for your boy. Her lips parted, words lost in her throat. He turned away. Wait, she called. What do I tell him? When he asks who you were. The rancher paused. The wind tugged at his coat, lifting the dust around his boots. Tell him mercy was the only law that ever mattered, he said. Then he walked into the morning. Years later, the story still lived in Dry Creek. Old men told it by firelight. The tale of a widow, her boy, and the silent man who faced a gang under a red sun. Some said he was a ghost, the spirit of a lawman long dead. Others swore he was real, a man who carried the weight of sins that weren't his to bear. But the children only remember the name, Mercy, and the story that began with a plea, please don't take my child away, became the legend of the day when silence spoke and justice wore a human face.